Hi, everybody. It's Bookish talk today. It will be a shorter version of iBookBinding's podcast. But once again, we have a guest. This is Ben Elbel, a French, Dutch, and maybe British bookbinder.
knows? Who
as,
knows?
as, as you worked in Britain for some time, I guess we can call you that. And
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
And for our American listeners, those are all countries in Europe.
yeah,
Not
and
not not anymore. Not anymore. One of them, Britain, is not in Europe.
well, yeah, almost not in Europe.
Technically, still.
Yeah, yeah, and it should be. I guess this announcement should have been a bit different because we had to have Boekkunstbeurs, book arts fair here in Leiden in November, where Ben usually introduces his new tutorials and other things. But of course, it didn't happen because of COVID, and Ben had to announce it separately.
Yeah. So what we planned at first we were gonna launch it on the fair, but then that was cancelled. So we thought we make a mini fair here in the bindery.
Yeah.
And we started inviting people, and it was all going well. And then they changed the rules again. We were gonna have 10 people at a time maximum. And then they changed that to you can only have 3 people.
2 or 3, yeah, 3 people.
I'm struggling to keep up with all these rules. They change all the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was not doable anymore. So we decided to launch on Instagram, and we did that on the 15th. So it's less than a month ago, and it was great. I mean, that's one of the things of this situation. It opens your eyes to other possibilities because you're forced to try other things, and then you realize, oh, actually, this is technology is amazing. So we had instead of having, we were going to have, I think, 20 to 30 people coming to the bindery for the event. We had around 100 people on Instagram, and we did a whole 1 hour launch, which is a long time, and people stayed throughout, and until the moment where we opened a champagne bottle and officially launched. Quite frankly, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that for the next ones from now on, because it's just wonderful. We had people from all over the place, and people were participating as well, asking questions. I wasn't so good at keeping up with the question. That's something I have to improve. I need to get someone look at it, because it's really hard to present something and at the same time to read the
exactly.
The
you need a person who is devoted to reading questions, and and moderator of sorts. So because not all the questions have to be answered, and but some of the questions have to be rephrased or something like that. And when you need to do this on your own, it really takes away your time and focus from the main theme.
Stepan, you tried live broadcasting on YouTube too, or on Instagram. What was it?
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah.
How did that go?
Well, it was fun, but it was really tiring and taxing, and it definitely really hard to follow all the messages if you are alone and you are trying to, I don't know, make a book in the same time. So you definitely need somebody who would help you with all that stuff.
Yeah, and plus, the extra difficulty for me is I was doing it in 2 languages. I was doing it in French as well.
Yeah.
God, that must have been so boring for people. But I said, hey, look, this is an opportunity to learn French as well if you're English, and to practice your English if you're French. Yeah. And then people didn't seem to mind. They stayed the whole time. So it's cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So. Yeah. Here it is. I don't know if you can see it. I've put all the projects that we've published so far.
Your collection of projects, yeah.
Yeah. These are the finished books, and on the other side are the tutorials. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the number 6 is this guy that we launched last month. So it's called the Pianel Binding, and that's what it looks like. I already showed it in the last episode.
Yeah, we already discussed it in our first podcast, and so if anyone wants to get some additional details, they can also watch this first episode of our podcast, because Ben talks about the history of this. Yeah, but we would definitely like to hear something something about it now.
Yeah, well, I hope I'm not going to repeat myself, but basically, this is my take on the piano hinge binding.
Yeah.
So piano hinge is a kind of hinge that basically has a rod, and then there's cylinders around it that can rotate like that, and it's called piano hinge because that's how the lid of the piano is the same principle as a door hinge, but a door hinge usually has just one rod and another rotating. Piano hinge has a whole series of them, cylinders. Yeah. And so it's been used, actually it's been used throughout the centuries in bookbinding by various people. One of the most notable and most known ones are the I think it's 18th century jewelry bindings. They're they're made entirely out of silver or similar material. And
this makes sense.
yeah, obviously, if it's a stiff material, you have no option than to do piano hinge. But with this silversmith binding, actually it's called silversmith. I think those weren't made by bookbinders; they were actually made by specialist silversmiths. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to make something that bookbinders can do with regular bookbinding equipment. So that doesn't require any specialist equipment. And then the other thing I wanted to do is something that is non-intrusive to the text block, because there's also examples of piano hinge bindings in bookbinding where you have to kind of cut the sections, and then the sections is the sections that have the rod inside of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. I wanted something that works on a regular text block made out of sections. And then I wanted something that looks very, very contemporary, very sharp, and very, very minimal. So these three things, I started playing around with.
Well, that sounds like something you would like to do.
Yeah, and last but not least, I wanted it to open as well, because it sounds like, oh yeah, hinge, piano hinge, has the word hinge, so it has to open, but it automatically opens. But the truth is, most of these piano hinge bindings don't actually open very well. The only thing that opens well is the board.
Yeah.
But then text block, it doesn't. So yeah, the result is this, and so I hope it ticks all the boxes. It is easy. No, it's not easy to make. It is, but you can do it without any specialist equipment. The only thing that's obviously that's unusual to bookbinding is the rods.
You need to cut the rods, yeah.
Yeah, these are very easy to find in model shops or DIY shops. And in order to cut them, you just need nippers.
Nippers, yeah.
Nippers, or and then to stand them down, you need some sandpapers, and that's
or
it.
Maybe jigsaw.
Yeah, something like that. But you don't need special, because there's other examples of piano hinges. Piano hinge bindings are for example, the one from Alain Taral. Who is a carpenter bookbinder. So this is made entirely out of wood. It's absolutely beautiful, but you kind of have to be a carpenter to do it.
Yeah.
To do it properly.
That complicates things.
Yeah. And there's who else can we quote? There's Edgar Claes, who has his own version of the piano hinge binding. He does it with parchment. It's very, very clever, by the way. We also have his tutorial on our shop. But it does look kind of traditional in the way, and in the end it has a rounded spine, and it has the aesthetics of a traditional binding, and I wanted to go a bit further with this and give it a sort of I don't know, Martian aesthetics or cyborg aesthetics.
Well,
You know,
it's
from the
timely
future.
with Elon Musk's experiments, and
Oh yeah.
it's very timely.
Yeah. I'm hoping to send one of them on the next SpaceX mission to Mars.
Yeah, you mentioned it wasn't that easy to make, but
Right.
how long does it take?
I think that's a really good question. Actually, I'm still waiting for feedback from users, from people. But I think it takes about 3 days. And there's two days that are quite intense, and then the last day is basically just the last step, and it takes about 15 minutes. So yeah, it's about that. You start with the text block. The text block is like I explained, it's a regular text block with sections, so it's sewn in a very normal way. And then there's this inner cover, which is this card here. That is the secret for it to open, because look what it does.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. So there's this kind of gusset on the inside that allows the text block to open independently.
It traces the book block and that this allows to open it flat, because otherwise there would be too much tension from the covers.
Yeah, you couldn't open it, especially with a round spine. It would be very hard for the spine to flex.
Yeah.
So so you make this inner cover, and then you make the outer cover, which is entirely separate from the book block, which is also something that I really appreciate, because you can stamp this thing completely flat if you want to decorate it. There's something I really like. It's technically
it's a case binding. Yeah,
it's a case binding. I love case bindings. I think they're more versatile. And yeah, here's the cover. So it's very I would say simple. There's a board here, there's a spine there, and a board there, and those three elements can hinge with one another. And all you see from the rod is the section, the polished section at head and at tail. To answer Pavel's question, you asked about the level of this of difficulty. It looks like it looks incredibly simple, because it looks like there's nothing to it, right? There's just a board, a hinge, a spine, and a board. But in reality, there's a lot that's hidden. And to create these loops around the rods, well, they rotate around this, and then they come back, and then they have to be filled in, and you don't want any of that to show. Everything is neat and flat at the end. There's the board has in reality has got many more layers than that. Now you just see one layer, but there's a bunch of different layers, and it starts off.
And I should add something about the boards, because you have a wide-angle camera on your smartphone. I suppose it's a smartphone. So when you hold your book at the side of the frame, the board becomes curved, but it's curved only because of the camera. It's just a remark for our viewers, because I'm sure that the boards are completely flat on your book.
Yeah, they're pretty flat. I mean, they are curved a little bit this way, which is something that I do on purpose. I think a binding always looks better. In my view, there's a curve that way. Definitely not that way. And it's a matter of taste if you prefer it flat or slightly curved. I prefer slightly curved. Also, it feels better, and it produces a nicer noise when you close the board. Okay. Yeah.
So can you rank your tutorials from the easiest to the hardest? There are 6 of them now, so it's a lot of tutorials to choose from.
Yeah, this is definitely the hardest the hardest subject we've done so far. And one of the reasons is that everything is hidden. There's actually, I realized in most of my previous projects, you could kind of figure out, guess how it's made by just looking at it. So this one, for example, the onion binding,
Yeah.
it's all legible. You just have to look at the spine, and there's nothing hidden. Everything you see in here is there, and there's nothing else than that. So and that's something I like aesthetically. I like it when elements of constructions are visible, and when you can. I guess another thing I really like is when you can take a binding apart mentally. So you just have to look at it, and you can sort of separate the elements mentally. It's kind of very playful, something I really appreciate. With this one, you can, to some extent, you can separate the book block from the cover mentally,
Yeah.
but it's much more difficult to actually figure out how it's made. It's the first time where the elements of construction actually are completely hidden, and because of that reason, there's a lot of steps involved, and a lot of it can be at times can be a little counterintuitive. You're gonna do a steps ahead of time. You won't know if you just jump right into it why you're doing this. You should really first read all the tutorials to get a good idea of where we're going with this, and then then it makes sense. So yeah, it is I would say the most one of the most difficult. And also there's a lot of small, very fine handlings, I would say, that just require a lot of the good hand skill. So it is a challenging project. Certainly the most challenging we've done so far. And it was also the most challenging to translate into a tutorial form. It was. At times I really I scratched my head for a long time. How on earth am I going to explain this? There's tiny things. But we had a great photographer, Paul Slot, that we worked with for the first time. We did a really fantastic job. And then what I did, which I always do, is when it comes to actually editing, to creating the book, I will make a rough version, and then I will send that rough, before going further in detail, I will send that rough version to a bunch of people. And I think I sent it to 6 or 7 people this time. To some of them had done the binding before with me in a workshop, but for some of them they had never done it. It was the first time, just to see if it actually works. And their feedback is extremely useful, extremely valuable for me to tweak and change things. In the end, I had to add lots and lots of drawings, which is something I'm quite reluctant to do because it's unbelievably time consuming, the drawings. But I really had to do it because to give an overview, there's times in the book where we stop. Okay, let's stop with the making. I'm going to show you where we're going, and the best way I found to do this in this particular case is to make drawings of where you can see the binding being made. Actually, I start with a photograph of the finished binding, which I deconstruct. I say, hey, okay, look at this. What if we now? I'm going to show what this board is made of. So it's actually made of 2 layers. Boom, and then you start seeing, oh, okay, there's 2 layers in there. And the loops, where do the loops come from? Well, they come from that layer. And then the loops open up, and the thing opens up until there's goes back to the first step of the binding, one long piece of paper, about like that. And then we go into the details of how we do it the other way around. We start with that piece of paper, and I'm going to show you in detail how I put all this together into the final product. And that took 4 pages of the book, but I think it's really useful. Because the one thing I hate is is to do something without knowing why. So I felt like I had to explain that better. Yeah, that's it. Well, we're pretty happy. We're pretty happy with the results. It's the longest one also in terms of number of pages, and there was a lot of sweat, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
Could you also describe the process of designing the binding in the first place? Not about the tutorial, but the binding itself. It looks like an engineering and architecture project to me more than a book. Do you go through many iterations? Do you make a mock-up? Do you make drawings? How did that come together?
Yeah, and I also wanted to add up to this question. I wanted to ask how you get all these ideas of new structures, because it's not only about bindings but also about the structures themselves. And do you have anything in works now for the future?
Yeah, I do. I have it's the pixel binding that I showed you last time.
Yeah.
Maybe I can show again. But this binding, how it came about, it was in 2007. I was a student in Ascona, the Centro del Libro, and my teacher Edwin Heim told me about a class that was not available to me, but a class he had run a few years back, where they'd been making things with rod. They'd been exploring piano hinge, the piano hinge. Basically, they give students a couple of rods and some paper, and here you go, make something. That's a workshop I would have loved to take, but I didn't. So instead I started playing with it on my own. I thought, hey, cool, that sounds like a fun thing to do. And so I created this first mock-up in 2007. The basic idea is that.
But this one wouldn't open as well as.
No, it does. It has all the elements. It has all the elements. But it's not as refined. I think it's probably a bit difficult to explain the basic idea, but. No, I would have to make a drawing for that. But yeah, Pavel, I did this in 2007 as an experiment, and then I didn't look at it, didn't touch it for 10 years. So roughly in 3 years ago, I came back to this. Hey, I had this piano hinge binding that I made 10 years ago. It was cool. It's promising. Let's start working again on it. And I went back to work, and what I wanted to do is to refine it. So now here you have, I mentioned that the boards is made of in the final product is made of just one layer. Here you can see the two layers separate, and I didn't think it was finished enough. I didn't think it was fine enough. So I went back to work and tweaked and fine-tuned all these details. The other thing, there was some play. If you can see it here, there was some play.
We can hear it. I'm not sure that we can see it, but we definitely can hear the clicking sound.
Yeah, and you can see the rod also here. So there's gaps between the loops, which I guess is a nice feature. But it wasn't deliberate. This happened by mistake. So I wanted to, if I'm gonna put out a method to do something, it has to be a method where you can actually control everything, not just, oh, maybe there will be a gap, maybe there won't, So I had to fix that too. And I so simplified the way the inner cover is made, but it's the same construction in a nutshell. And that took about I still have those prototype bindings somewhere in a box. I think it took about 7 different mock-ups, different bindings like this one to get to a point where I was satisfied with something that was working without surprise, without that you could. It's a method that you can apply and have a good result. Every single time, not just by luck one time.
Is it on average how it goes with your other tutorials and other structures as well? You need to go through, I don't know, 5 to 10 mock-ups or something like that before you can be satisfied with the end result.
Oh yeah. It is. It's a very very long process. And you see the result, and it's a sort of self-evident thing. Oh yeah, well, of course it is what it is. But what people don't realize is that for every single element of every single choice, there are many options. So it's a matter of picking the right one. And oftentimes you can. Sometimes I do make a lot of drawings, but you don't really know until you actually try it. So most of the time you have to make lots and lots of samples and then select pick the one that works. Yeah, so it's a lot of work, but it's something that I'm really passionate about. So it doesn't feel like hard work to me. It's something that I love doing, and I feel like I have a particular ability for that, and I want to put these things out and empower other people to do it.
Yeah, this is great.
Would you say that tutorials you produce give people a fixed routine, or can they fork from it? Like, do you give options? You can go that way or that way, or are you a perfectionist who thinks that this is the way that it should be done?
Yeah. Well, you can. I try to give a method that, like I said, that works 100% of the times. But I always encourage people to make changes and make alterations to suit their needs or their aesthetics. And I'm really pleased when that happens and somebody sends me a photo of, hey, I've done your onion binding, but instead of being a round shape, now it's a triangle shape. Awesome. It's same construction, but they just change one thing to make it look different. I mean, ultimately, that's kind of what I'm trying to do. It's I want to give the idea to people that technique is not something that is set in stone once and for all. That it's something that you can play with, and that you don't have to ask permission to do that. You can do it. You don't have to. It's not disrespectful to generations of other bookbinders before you to do it. And I think it's very empowering, because it's if you manage to think freely in terms of technique, you'll be able to solve problems that arise in your bookbinding practice. I mean, here we're talking about things that are perhaps it'll be difficult to make a living from making a binding like that, because it's an enormous amount of work. But in your day-to-day practice, you might have things that are more realistic, that you need a solution. Then you need a solution for, and if you have this mindset of I'm going to look at the first principles of that. What is the action required here, and then how can I solve this? Then you can solve these things and actually make money with your bookbinding practice. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what I want people to realize, and it's the fun part too.
I guess it's time for us to end this podcast. It was a great pleasure to talk to you, Ben, and thank you for introducing your new tutorial and this type of structure. I should add that your project is bookbinding out of the box, and we will post a link below this video. And I urge our viewers and listeners to check Ben's bookbinding project as well, Elbel Libro. We also will
that's my commercial bindery. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I wanted to return to the moment you talked about having a stream in both French and English languages, because we have plans for the next year to add French-speaking hosts to our podcast to talk with French-speaking bookbinders and people of book.
Right.
Because sometimes it's not easy to reach out to them in English, and it would be much easier to talk to them in French, and maybe then after that translate our podcasts.
Yeah.
But I have a call to our followers, especially the followers who would like to see this French version of podcast, because we need budget to do this. And if you'd like to see this happening, please join the crowd of our patrons on Patreon. And we will make it happen next year.
Very cool. So who you thinking? You got people?
Yeah, I have a colleague from Moscow, and she worked in France for some time. She speaks French fluently, and she's a professional. She's a book professional. So I thought she will be good to join the crowd. But then, if you want to join us. On not maybe regular basis, we would be glad to invite you to be.
You mean to translate? Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to help. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Maybe not to translate. Well, maybe to translate as well, but maybe to be a host or a co-host in some of the future episodes that will introduce some of our French colleagues.
Yeah, that'd be a fun thing to do, and something that I don't think has been done very much, because there's really this French school, and then the rest of and then the English speaking school, and somehow never the twain shall meet, and it's just a language barrier, and I think that'd be extremely valuable thing to do.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, as I said, many thanks to our patrons on Patreon, and many thanks to all of our viewers and listeners. You can watch our podcast on YouTube. Please subscribe to our group, like the videos, ring the bell. You can also listen to podcasts on all the major platforms like iTunes or Google Podcasts or SoundCloud. And thank you very much to Ben for talking to us. Thanks a lot to Pavel for being my co-host. See you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Stefan. Thanks, Pavel.
Yeah.
And thank you, our listeners.
Okay, that's it.